Once upon a time, there was a little girl. Once her rich father married an evil stepmother. She settled in the house with her 2 daughters. Their faces were beautiful and white, but their hearts were evil and cruel. And then came a difficult time for the poor girl. From morning until late in the evening, they forced her to do dirty work, carry water, heat the stove, cook food, wash dishes, and do laundry. And besides, the half-sisters did their best to upset her as much as possible. They mocked her, poured peas and wheat into the ashes, and she had to sit and pick them out. In the evening, when she was tired of work, she had to go to bed not in bed, but on the floor, next to the stove. And because she was always in ash, dust, and dirty, the sisters called her Cinderella. But then it happened one day that the king started a feast, which was supposed to last for 3 whole days, and called all the beautiful girls of the country to the holiday so that his son could choose a bride for himself. When the 2 named sisters learned that they, too, could come to the feast, they instantly began to dress up and preen. Cinderella also wanted to go dancing, but her stepmother did not let her go, because she had no dress or shoes, and she was dirty. And then the evil stepmother poured a bowl of wheat into the ashes and said that if Cinderella collected it in 2 hours, then she could go with her sisters. Cinderella went out into the garden and cried. And then 2 white doves flew in, followed by a whole flock of different birds. They swooped down on the ash and began to peck, and so they chose all the grains in a bowl. In less than an hour, they finished their work, and everyone flew back. Cinderella brought a bowl to her stepmother, began to rejoice, thinking that she could go to the feast. But her stepmother would not let her in any way. She turned her back on Cinderella and hurried with her 2 daughters to the ball. When there was no one left at home, Cinderella sat down on the floor and cried with grief. And then 2 white doves flew in, followed by a whole flock of different birds, and they threw off their dress and shoes shiny and all in gold. She quickly put on this dress and came to the bride. They saw her stepsisters and stepmother and thought that it must be some strange princess, she was so beautiful in her golden dress. It never occurred to them that it was Cinderella. The prince came out to meet her, took her hand, and they began to dance. And he liked Cinderella so much that he did not want to dance with any other girl. She danced until the evening and wanted to return home, but the prince asked her to see her off. He wanted to know whose beautiful girl this is, and where she lives. But Cinderella ran away from him and climbed onto the dovecot. The prince ordered to destroy the dovecot, but there was no one in it. And nowhere near could he find his beautiful stranger. No one could have guessed that Cinderella was rescued by pigeons that took her home. The prince was upset and went to the palace with his head down. And suddenly he saw a shoe, lifted it up. It was so small and elegant and all of pure gold. The prince guessed that when Cinderella ran away from him, the shoe from her left foot remained on one of the steps. The prince was delighted and ordered to find the mistress of this shoe, and to whom it suits he will marry that one. The parents returned from the ball. They saw that Cinderella was asleep in her shirt on ash, and a dim light was on by the stove. Both sisters went to their rooms, hoping that tomorrow they would be lucky enough to put on the golden slipper. The next day, the prince came to their house, and said that everyone who wants to try on the shoe of his future wife should come out. 2 sisters came out, and the stepmother locked Cinderella in the house and did not let her out. The older sister tried it on a small shoe. The younger sister tried it on the shoe as great. The prince was about to leave, but Cinderella climbed out of the window and ran out to him. And she put on a shoe, and it just fit her. The prince looked into her eyes and recognized in her the very beautiful girl with whom he danced. He took Cinderella, put her on a horse and rode off to play a wedding with her. And he ordered the sisters and stepmother to be locked in their house, and never let them out of there. This is how they were punished for their malice and deceit. Once upon a time there lived an old man and an old woman in a small house on the edge of the forest. Everything in their life was arguing, only one thing was missing: the old man and the old woman did not have children. Once the old man asked to bake a gingerbread in the shape of a little man. The old woman looked into the barn, and there was almost no flour left. She took a bowl, scrubbed it along the box, swept it along the bottom, and a handful of 2 handfuls of flour gathered. The old woman kneaded the dough with sour cream, and when she was rolling out a gingerbread on the table, she took it and made it in the shape of a little man with arms, legs, with a head, and put it in the oven. After a while, the old woman came up to see if the gingerbread was baked, took it and put it on the window to cool. The gingerbread man cooled down, lay down, but suddenly got up and ran as fast as possible out of the house, from the window to the bench, from the bench to the floor, across the floor, and to the doors, jumped over the threshold to the porch, from the porch to the courtyard, from the courtyard to the gate, farther and farther. The old woman called her husband, and they both rushed after him. But it's not so easy to catch the gingerbread man. Now, he has already reached the field where the peasants were threshing their crops. Running past, the gingerbread man shouted at them that he had already run away from the old woman and the old man, and he would easily run away from them too. The peasants heard this and ran after him. But no matter how fast they ran, they could not catch up with him. A gingerbread man ran up to the field where the mowers were mowing the grass. Running past, he shouted to them that he had already run away from the old woman, and from the old man, and from the peasants, and he would easily run away from them too. The mows could not stand such ridicule. Everyone rushed after the gingerbread man. They run as fast as they can, but they cannot catch up. And towards the little man the cow is walking, he shouted to her that he had already run away from the old woman, and from the old man, and from the peasants, and from the mowers, and he would easily run away from her too. The cow got angry, and also rushed after the gingerbread man. Only he cannot catch up. And to meet him a pig. The little man shouted that he had already fled from the old woman, and from the old man, and from the peasants, and from the mowers, and from the cow, and he would easily run away from her too. A pig screeched and ran after. Only she could not catch up, she was too fat. A gingerbread man runs along the road, and a hare meets him. The little man said that he had already run away from the old woman, and from the old man, and from the peasants, and from the mowers, and from the cow, and from the pig, and he would easily run away from him too. The hare heard this and ran after him. Nor can he catch up with the little man, only the hare saw him. A gingerbread man runs, and a wolf meets him. "I will eat you," says. And the little man answered him that he had already fled from the old woman, and from the old man, and from the peasants, and from the mowers, and from the cow, and from the pig, and from the hare, and he would easily run away from him too. The wolf growled and rushed at the gingerbread man, and he dodged and ran as fast as he could. Only the wolf saw him. A gingerbread man is running, and a huge bear is meeting him. His little man was not afraid, but shouted that he had already fled from the old woman, and from the old man, and from the peasants, and from the mowers, and from the cow, and from the pig, and from the hare, and from the wolf, and he would easily run away from him too. A ferocious bear stamped his foot and ran after him. But the bear was too slow to catch up with the fast gingerbread man. A gingerbread man runs, and a fox meets him. The fox was very cunning, but the little man did not know this. Therefore, out of habit, he began to shout that he had already fled from the old woman, and from the old man, and from the peasants, and from the mowers, and from the cow, and from the pig, and from the hare, and from the wolf, and from the bear, which means he will easily run away from her too. The fox listened to the end and said that she was very old, did not hear anything. She came closer to the little man and asked him to repeat it. Obeyed her silly gingerbread man and began to brag again. The fox listened to the end and said that she still did not hear anything. She came even closer to the little man and asked him to repeat it again. The gingerbread man agreed, and then only he started anew when the fox pounced on him and ate it. And the gingerbread man no longer bragged about